Well, hello there all you absolutely magnificent people, and welcome back to another episode of An Ecologist Plays, where we talk about nature while playing games. My name is Will, I'm an ecologist by training, and my oh my, it has been a while since I've played Grounded, but here we are back again. Now off screen I did build something. This is my water container along with a very elaborate little system to try and get water droplets to fall into the water container and for it to then be stored there. So the way to get the water droplets down is simply to do that. Only problem being, yeah, sometimes the big bubbles get in the way. So we're just going to drink that and voila, the droplet falls into the water container. But there are two web collectors up there and that collects enough water for me to actually fill this and keep this quite filled. Now today is going to be a bit of a sadder episode. Today we are going to go to the picnic table and on the way there we will most likely be encountering and then talking about bees. Because, well, the bees need our help. And when I say bees, I do not mean honeybees, because unless you are in Europe, Asia or Africa, honeybees are exotic. The typical honeybee, Apis mellifera, that you may see around the world, well, they are exotic. They are especially a problem in North America. Now, here I am in South Africa. We do have an indigenous subspecies of that honeybee, and that is Apis mellifera capensis, the Cape honeybee. So for us, it's less of a problem, though apparently in some areas it is actually still a problem. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point as well. But when we say save the bees, we're actually referring to things like bumblebees, carpenter bees, solitary bees, a whole bunch of other, basically a whole smorgasbord of other bees that we generally do not think about when we say save the bees. And unless I'm very much mistaken, there should be some bees up here. Indeed, right over there and over there we've got two bees that are sleeping. Now these are not the honeybees, instead these are bumblebees, and I think these may in fact be the American bumblebee, though I may be mistaken and this may just be a generic bumblebee. Now the American bumblebee, Bombus pennsylvanicus, is actually threatened with extinction now, and that is due to things like destruction of their habitat, loss of places to hibernate, and very importantly the use of, okay, I don't know why you're attacking that snail, but also very significantly the use of pesticides, bee and pollinator unfriendly pesticides, especially pesticides containing neonicotinoids, which are compounds that are highly toxic to pollinators such as these bumblebees. And that is just sad. That is so sad. Okay, listen here. Antilda, you are being naughty. Stay here. See, now the bee has flown off because you can't stop attacking the snail. Stop it. Now the other bee has also flown off. Now I do see there is another bumblebee coming closer, and you can see there the pollen that is stuck on its hind legs. Obviously, bees like these bumblebees are extremely important pollinators. They will be visiting a whole bunch of flowers, and bumblebees seem to be especially attracted to the color purple. So they love visiting those flowers. Echinacea, coneflowers, those types of lavenders, those types of flowers. Now in South Africa we don't actually have bumblebees. Instead we've got carpenter bees, which fill a very similar role to these bumblebees over here. Now the bumblebees are also eusocial, meaning that they have got a colony with a queen and she's the only one that breeds. The other bees in the colony will be workers. They collect food for the larvae and for the queen as well. And a new queen is usually a little bit bigger than the other bumblebees, a little bit more slow moving. And if you ever find one of those, please do not kill it. They will start a new colony of these beautiful little fuzzy bumblebees. Absolutely amazing creatures. As I've said, the neonicotinoids, the toxic compounds that are toxic to pollinators, those are used to kill other insect pests, and it is a systemic poison. In other words, it is taken up by the plant and it then goes into all the tissues, including the pollen and the nectar. And when the bumblebees then collect the pollen and the nectar, well, then they come into contact with those toxic compounds. Now, unfortunately, due to the use of pesticides and due to the habitat destruction and the loss of plants that they can visit, the loss of food for these bumblebees, a lot of them, like the American bumblebee, are actually threatened with extinction. And if they were to disappear, the species that rely on them for their survival also will disappear. And when I say the species that rely on them, I am not just referring to the plants that rely on them. In the US, for example, there's actually a type of cuckoo bumblebee, which is a social parasite. The queen of that cuckoo bumblebee actually kills the queen of the American bumblebee and then takes her place in the colony and lays her own eggs in that colony. Now that bumblebee may actually be extinct. They haven't been seen in something like 20 years. And that is likely linked directly to that loss of the American bumblebee. With them becoming rarer, as a result they became rarer. And that is, yeah, that's bad. That's having a knock-on effect. Right, now we are heading in this direction because I would like to go onto the picnic table. Aha! An orc weevil. Ooh, a big orb weaver. Of course there is. And the big orb weaver is no more. Unfortunately, the game is really laggy for me at the moment here where we are. So let's just, try to take out some things like that orc weevil from range. Now, of course, it will be very bad if we were to lose species like bumblebees, because they are incredibly important pollinators. And oftentimes when we say save the bees, people think honeybees, but well, they are very generalist. They will go for a variety of flowers, and yes, that may be important in the ecosystems that they evolved. But bumblebees are much more specialized. They will pollinate a whole bunch of flowers that will not be pollinated by anything else. So if they are lost from the ecosystem, well, those plants will not have anything to pollinate them. And some species especially need something known as sonication, which is when the bumblebees, like that little one over there, actually grab onto the flower and then they buzz at a specific frequency, and that results in the pollen being released. Unless something buzzes at the right frequency, the pollen will actually not be released. And so if you don't have bumblebees, or in South Africa the carpenter bees, to do that, well, then those plants cannot be pollinated, and that is obviously a problem for those plants. Now there are 2 orb weavers over here, which is not great, but I'm sure we should be able to manage this, hopefully. There we go, this is how we do it. Okay, we have knocked the one unconscious, and it is dead. And the second one should be dead soon. There we go, also unconscious, which means great stuff. We can just slash at it. And there we go, the second orb weaver is dead. And of course the reason we are up here is for the raw science over here. So a whole bunch of little cockroach nymphs over here. Interesting. No big cockroach as far as I can see, so that's, good to know. A whole bunch of little nymphs here we could technically kill. We are not going to, but technically we could. And a briefcase here that we can technically open as well if we have the code. Now, I don't have the code yet, so we're not going to open that yet. So now the very important question is, of course, what can you do? And the best thing you can do is actually to plant plants that the bumblebees need. So as I've mentioned, they love going for purplish flowers. If you can plant indigenous purple flowers in your garden, even if it is just a pot on a windowsill with purple, especially indigenous flowers, well, the bumblebees will already thank you for that. Additionally, of course, do not use pesticides, especially ones that are pollinator unfriendly or contain those neonicotinoids. If you don't use those pesticides, you already are helping the bumblebees as well. But then also just, raise awareness. There are also some amazing organizations that are doing their best to save the bumblebees. If you are in the US, there's the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, which is doing marvelous work, not only with bumblebees and other pollinators, but with all kinds of other creatures and other pollinators, including the American monarch butterfly, which is also threatened with extinction. So have a look at what they are doing. And then if you are in the UK, there is the Bumblebee Conservation Trust that you can also have a look at, and I'll link both of those organizations in the description below. So go have a look, and if you can, contribute and help the bumblebees and other pollinators and important species survive. And the last thing you can also do, which is quite easy, is to take part in iNaturalist and actually take photographs and post it on iNaturalist, especially of bumblebees and other pollinators, because that gives scientists an idea of where the pollinators are, where the bumblebees are and the other bee species are, all those lovely things. And we can't make decisions if we don't know where the threatened species are. So those are some of the most important things you can do. Now, on a different note, you can see here I've got spicy safety level 2 at the moment. I just need to eat 5 more spicy shards, and that's going to give me level 3, which is going to be very useful as I quickly try to run through here. We'll see if that works or not. Alright, so we do have level 3 now to run through this cool box over here to get to the top. I believe the best thing to do is to actually equip a torch and then try to run through. Yes, with spicy safety, it is really helping us there. That is absolutely marvelous. We're just going to grab the icicles here. That is a new resource. So we're going to scan that when we get home again. And then we're just going to quickly heat up again. With our tiny, tiny bodies, freezing is a real threat. This is a significant threat to our survival. So we are just going to run straight on through here. Not going to spend any time lollygagging. No siree. And there we go. With spicy safety, you don't even need special warm clothes. You can just run straight on through. Oh, there is an orc ladybug. Well, well, well. Let's go take it on, shall we? It's a little bit dark, but we should be able to at least do that and then do this. And there we go. We've got a torch. And we're just going to poke at the ladybug here and see how things go. Come, ladybug. There we go. And there we go. It is gone. And you can see they're really mind controlled. Now, what we see there, those whirly eyes, that is very reminiscent of a parasite that infects certain snails and goes to the eye stalks, and it's this pulsating glob that kind of resembles a very drunk caterpillar. The idea being that it attracts the attention of a bird, and the bird then goes, "Ooh, juicy caterpillar. There's another one of those orc ladybugs. Let's go take that one out as well." And the idea then being that it attracts the bird, and the bird then eats the eye stalks of that snail, and in the process obtain the parasite. The parasite completes its life cycle within the bird, and then the eggs of that parasite gets pooped out in the droppings of the bird, to then again be eaten by the snail, and the whole cycle starts anew. Okay, the ladybug is very determined to just turtle up, and it is, well, basically dead. Wonderful. And just one pokey more, and oh, two pokies more. There we go. Okay, now I'm not sure what we're doing here, but we are hacking something. But you know what? There is one more thing you can also do, and that is actually to leave some areas in your garden, if you have got a nice garden, to leave some of those areas as wildlife areas. Especially areas that are unmowed, because that will allow some plants that are growing between the grasses to actually flower. And that may help the pollinators such as bumblebees to survive. And bumblebees very often need a place to hibernate and just spend time recovering, especially after periods of exertion. And for that they need places that have leaves and stuff like that. So it's also very nice and very useful to leave leaves lying around in your garden as well, because that will also help species such as the bumblebees to have a nice place to hibernate, and if they could, they would thank you for that. Unfortunately, most people are not doing that, and as a result, species are disappearing at an alarming rate. And this past weekend, I spent time with my honors students doing, amongst other things, pollinator surveys to look at how many pollinators there are in a certain area, in a conservation area. And, it was kind of shocking. I really expected a bit more. We did find some, but nowhere near as many as I had hoped we would find. But that may very well be because the conservation area that we surveyed is actually very close to farmlands, areas where crops are sprayed with pesticides, and as a result, well, pollinators are in short supply. Even birds that feed on insects, well, they are also in short supply. So that is actually, it is quite sad to behold. And when they say there is an insect apocalypse happening, yeah, they're not lying. It feels like there is, and I'm pretty sure that is the case, there's a serious decline in pollinators all around the world. So every little bit we do to help them makes a difference. Alright, now I do believe we have done what we could do on the picnic table, which is marvelous. So we are just going to head home now. Straight past the bombardier beetle, because why not? Now my wife Nick and I, we have done a whole bunch of things, and we're trying to help the pollinators. We don't mow very often, or don't have the lawn mowed very often. We have reduced the lawns we have on our property. Also planted a whole bunch of other plants. We've planted a whole bunch of plants, flowers, that the pollinators, such as carpenter bees in our case, would really enjoy and make use of. And we don't use any pesticides in our garden either, so we are trying our best to help those pollinators. Now, one thing people often also do would be to put out those little bee hotels or those insect hotels, and though those may be very useful, in some cases they may actually be a problem as well, because if you don't clean them between seasons, well, you can have diseases spreading as well. Alright, it is daytime. Let's just quickly check over here. Oh wow, our little water collector over here is actually filled up completely. So we've just filled up our canteen as well, and we are just going to drink the big bubble over here and see what happens when we press the Weevil. There we go, there goes a droplet into our water collector, and there comes another droplet. It is actually full, and there is another droplet. Wonderful. So that is unfortunately also where we are going to be calling it a day though, everybody, because, well, I am running on 4 hours sleep and I need to quickly edit this before it comes out in a few hours time. So yeah, I will see you guys again soon. It's a bit of a shorter episode, bit of a sadder episode, but there is always hope. And as long as we try our best to contribute to the continued survival of pollinators and we do our best not to harm them, there is still hope. Our children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren will still get to see some of the most amazing bugs that there are on Earth. So thank you very much everyone for joining us on a little adventure here today. Hope you had fun. Next time I will be perhaps talk a little bit more about the bumblebees themselves as well. And then we also will probably have our first raid of our base. So until next time everybody, stay safe. I'll see you all soon. Cheers!